I'm curious if in your discussions with folks, there's been talk about Murdoch just stepping away from the CEO role. Presumably, would he keep the chairman role?
Right. We're told everybody agrees that Rupert, under any scenario, Rupert Murdoch would remain chairman, possibly some sort of executive chairman role. He still controls a large part of the stock, so he's still going to be a very controlling figure at the company.
Andy, it's Adam. Question: is there any sense from behind the scenes that perhaps this might be a deal being worked out in the UK, or is this more a case of News Corp taking the bull by the horns on their own?
Well, I think if you look at the board of directors, the makeup of the board of directors, they're scattered geographically, as diverse as the company itself. So these discussions are happening, in New York, in London, and they're happening all over. And the independent directors are the ones having these discussions now. They're the ones who are looking into this, and some are very upset about the kind of the information they've been given and the level of involvement that they've had in this process so far.
Andy, just hold on for 1 second, because I also want to bring in Ken Doctor. He's a media and newspaper analyst with Outsell. He's joining us from Santa Cruz, and he actually has told Bloomberg News previously that this might be something that News Corp would consider, that Murdoch would potentially step down as CEO. Ken, thank you so much for joining us.
Quite welcome.
This obviously conforms to some of your expectations. Talk to us about what you're hearing and what your perception would be. Would this be a move forward if this was indeed to happen and Murdoch was to step down?
Well, it's a further attempt at damage control. You can see how quickly this story got beyond the control of Rupert Murdoch and News Corp. And he, in particular, is someone who is used to controlling the story. They thought they had it contained by the early arrests, and they thought they had laid the investigation to rest as well. But once it got out, and especially, I think, as Scotland Yard's involvement escalated in this, they lost control. And it is so unprecedented for Rupert Murdoch to lose control. He didn't know what to do. They hired Edelman, for risk control about Thursday of last week. But the story has been spinning out of control day by day. So it is a logical, as astounding as it is given the trajectory of Rupert Murdoch, it's a logical step. You close News of the World, you drop B Sky B, you apologize, you fire people late, but you fire people. You first say to Parliament, we're too busy to testify, which was fairly amazing the end of last week, and then you agree they're a step too late. And it's clear to the board members, the relatively few independent of the independent, that they are too late and that they are doing permanent damage to this company unless they can do real damage control.
Ken, it's Adam. You were one of the first analysts to come out way ahead of everybody else and say that Rebecca Brooks would have to leave. You said that was inevitable. What is the next inevitable step here?
Well, I think it is Chase Carey. It is hard to imagine Rupert Murdoch auditioning as we're talking about, but I think he is out the door as CEO, regardless of what happens tomorrow. That's going to happen. The chairmanship is there. It is a good holding pattern. But the illegalities here, as they get further uncovered, are going to cause more peril even to his chairmanship, I think. I think the next question in terms of personnel is James Murdoch. So, in a company that was not controlled by a person and not a family company, it's a quasi-family, quasi-public company, you would say James Murdoch was in authority at News International when this investigation happened, and even if he was not complicit in it and didn't know what really happened, some people find that hard to believe, but let's take it on face value. The negligence of being in charge would normally lead to the removal of that person from that position. So he's essentially the number 3 guy in News Corp right now. I would expect the next shoe to drop would be James Murdoch.
Andy, I want to bring you back into this conversation. Andy Fixmer, again, is one of the Bloomberg reporters who broke this story in the first place. Andy, in your reporting on this story, have you heard any news about James on the one hand and any other names surface besides Chase Carey as potential successors?
I haven't heard any other successors talked about at this point. Chase seems to be the guy that people are discussing the most. And as for James, I haven't heard much about what will happen with him, or that the concern around him is great. I do know that James is supposed to still move to New York and take over a new role in the next few months, and I believe they're still making plans for that to take place, for that transition to take place. So no change in plans as far as James is concerned, as far as I've been told.
Ken, go ahead, Adam.
No, well, I'll tell you what, a question for you, Andy, and is it possible that effectively Murdoch the senior is falling on the sword to protect Murdoch the junior?
That's an interesting question. I haven't heard anything that would support that or wouldn't support that at this point. That's anyone's guess, or that's nothing that I've been able to report.
And you're not concerned about James' position right now, or you are? Forgive me there, Julie.
Myself, no. I haven't heard any talk about James's position being threatened at this point. At this point, as far as I understand, preparations are still being made for James to move over to his new role as essentially COO in New York in the next few months, and that was still continuing. I haven't heard anything to the effect that he was being affected by this at this point.
Andy, thank you so much for bringing in this news, and obviously great scoop. Very interesting news here that Rupert Murdoch might be stepping down as CEO of News Corp. We'll see how he does before Parliament tomorrow. Andy Fixmer joining us from Los Angeles on the phone. And now I want to get back to Ken Doctor, who's a media analyst who's obviously been very closely watching this story, as have we all. Ken, tell me a little bit more, if you can, about Chase Carey, or is he sort of as known a quantity, as you say, as number 3 within the organization? Is he someone who can kind of take the company forward and take it past all of this?
I think he is a master operator. And so as a COO and having come out of the TV business, he knows the core businesses of News Corp, which are filmed entertainment, cable TV, and TV, as well as anybody else. And those are doing well. There is a big strategic question for News Corp, way beyond this crisis, which is all-consuming, of how it's going to play in the digital world. They're really focused on the movie screen and the television screen, and those businesses are doing okay, but the business is moving to mobile, it's moving to tablets, it's moving to smartphones, and they haven't been that successful. In the short term, he's quite a capable operator of the current businesses. And that's what they need, is they need stability. And they probably need stability from someone who has not been directly associated with News International.
Ken, I want to ask you to hold on for just a second, because I'd like to bring in Don Yacktman, who's actually a shareholder of News Corp. As of the last filing date, he was actually the 8th largest shareholder, about 3.2% of the company's shares outstanding. Don, thank you so much for joining us. We've been talking to you a lot about this story recently. As a shareholder, would this, again, we're all talking in hypotheticals, this is under discussion that Rupert Murdoch might step aside as CEO. Would this be a positive move? Don,
let me put it this way. I like Chase Carey. I think he'd do a fine job. There is a Murdoch discount in the stock, so the stock would probably react positively.
Don, it's Adam Johnson here in New York. I can't help but make the comparison to, say, BP, which fell 55% when it had the oil spill, Goldman Sachs, which throughout the crisis lost 80%. As cheap as News Corp may appear on the surface, it's only down 18, 19%. Couldn't it get cheaper based on just bad headlines?
Well, I could walk outside and find an elephant, but I wouldn't put a high probability on it. Okay, I mean, sure, it could drop, and in the short term, you got a lot of titillating news and a lot of people who would like to, like to see the stock go down. So, in the short term, the market is a voting machine, and so you're going to see a lot of voting going on in the short term. In the long term, it's a weighing machine, and what are you weighing? You're weighing cash flows, and like over 60% of the cash flows comes out of the Fox American properties, which are growing at a rapid rate. You got B Sky B, and now you know they aren't going to overpay for it because they're not going to take on the other 60%. And on top of that, you've got a lower stock price, and in August they're going to start buying back shares. So, this actually could end up being a positive rather than a negative for the shareholders as it's unraveling.
When you put all of this in perspective and you say, as so many have, that the newspaper business is so small with the company's overall revenue, and this is Rupert's baby. I mean, he has brought this company pretty much from inception to what it is today. So does this at all, even given the short-term negative headlines as you talk about, does this at all put News Corp at a disadvantage? Can a News Corp really go forward without a Rupert Murdoch?
Oh, I think, like I said, I think Chase Carey is a very capable executive. He's demonstrated that already. And when you get a company this size, and even Mr. Murdoch acknowledged this is a company of thousands of people. It's not dependent on one person. But give the guy a little credit. I mean, even, over 80 years, he's 80 years old, and you look at the long-term history, and it's quite a history. But like any human being, he has a batting average, and he has positives and negatives. I would just soon see the Post disappear. They're losing $100 million a year on it. And that's when. So I mean, there are things here that are going to be sorted out over time.
Don, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you so much for joining us so quickly to give us your reaction on this. Again, the news reiterating Rupert Murdoch may be stepping down as chief executive of News Corp. He testifies before Parliament tomorrow, so whether he steps down may be contingent on that performance. We'll have more coming up.